Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to Sign for More Injury Funding, the podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in personal injury, wrongful death, motor vehicle accidents, medical malpractice, and many other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and heart for all suffering individuals. More Injury Funding is a sponsor, member, associate, or business partner of this podcast, Georgia Trial Lawyers Association, Academy of Truck Accident Attorneys, Sandy Springs Bar Association, Georgia Association of Paralegals, Atlanta Legal Aid Society, State Bar of Georgia, St. Andrew Rowing Club in Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. In today's episode, I have a very special guest, Attorney Philip Milam with Milam Law Firm, LLC, based in Atlanta Metropolitan area, state of Georgia. We will dive deep today into a very specific and often missed aspect of personal injury, and that is the psychological impacts of an injury and the quality of life post-accident. Welcome to Sign for More Injury Funding podcast, Philip.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me, Laura.
Absolutely. So let's start our conversation with you explaining to us the concept of loss of enjoyment of life and how it can impact a person psychologically.
Yeah, that's it's certainly a broad term, no doubt about that. And here in personal injury, it has it can depend on so many factors. But typically a loss of enjoyment of life is being able to enjoy and do the things that mean the most to you personally in your life. We all have so many things we're doing. We work, we have bills to pay, a family to raise, all those things. And we're doing oftentimes we're working and doing things that we have to do. But enjoyment of life is also be able to do the things that bring you just a lot of personal satisfaction, peace, things that are fun, and take away and combat some of the stress that you live in your life. And that's important to everyone.
So, Philip, what are some common causes or factors that can lead to a loss of enjoyment in life?
Well, certainly one is the severity of an injury and a personal injury. And typically my work has been with car wrecks, truck accidents, those type of injuries that are caused in car wrecks. But certainly the severity of an injury can make a big difference. So you have someone who's got a whiplash type injury, a back injury, and they need some chiropractic care. And, it'll limit them to a certain extent for a certain period of time, or they may have a nagging injury. But they can still do a lot of what they had to do or wanted to do. And certainly the type of injury can make a difference. As I said, a soft tissue injury can make a difference. But you can still function in life. But then you take something like a bad injury to your leg or knee, a shattered foot, of things of that nature. Then all of a sudden your mobility to get around changes. And I've had people with wrist injuries, shoulder injuries, and then simple things like taking personal hygiene, taking a bath, getting dressed, all those things can really be affected. And so those are some of the issues that can affect somebody's loss of enjoyment. Of course, head trauma is a whole nother category, really, because it can affect how you think and how you process things and your energy level. So all of that comes into play.
Absolutely. All right, Philip. So how would you say a diminished capacity for enjoyment of life affect a person's overall well-being and mental health?
Well, I think that, as I said earlier, the things that we enjoy doing versus the things we have to do is something that keeps us in a balance with life. And when injuries come in, depending on their severity, it really changes that. I've seen people that get very anxious, and they feel like their life is out of control. I see them get angry because someone else has caused their condition, and their life feels like it may be spiraling out of control. A lot of people, their lives are certainly financially, sometimes paycheck to paycheck, or it's very limited in how long they can go without having a paycheck. And when you all of a sudden you have a inability to work, that really causes tremendous amounts of anxiety. And so depression, anxiety can set in. It can affect relationships and between spouses or girlfriends, significant others. I've seen people end up with a divorce simply from injuries from a car wreck and how their life spiraled out of control. So there's issues of pain medications that people can start with addiction issues, maybe drinking more because of trying to handle everything, and they become impatient too sometimes with the legal system, and I can understand that. I get impatient with the legal system as well, and I work it and understand it. But people that don't understand it, they see things that should be clear as a bell, and they don't understand why we're going through this process. And so that creates a lot of anxiety for them. But certainly coming back to the enjoyment of life, that loss of enjoyment, again, if you're not able to do the things that bring you happiness and peace and give you pleasure, then a lot of people can lose some level of hope and become despondent.
And you answered this so thoroughly. And my next question is actually very, kind of intertwined with the first question you just answered. But are there any specific psychological disorders or conditions that you would associate, from your experience, with a reduced ability to derive pleasure from life?
Well, certainly I've seen a lot of anxiety and depression, especially initially when injuries occur. You can have people that are out of work. All of a sudden, they got families they really can't take care of. They become more dependent on others to help them during this crisis, and they get really anxious about things. And then, those can continue over time. And I've had examples. For example, I'll give you one. I've had someone who was severely injured, young man. I say young man, he's in his 40s.
Of course,
yeah, that's very young to me. And he ended up with having his neck broken from a tragic accident with a turnover in a ATV type vehicle, and ended up being paralyzed from his neck down. And he goes from living life to the fullest, a golfer, tennis player, fun loving, to totally dependent on everything in his life. And I've seen people in that situation go into severe depression. And and your system around you can have a major effect on that if you've got a good system.
And can you, Philip, think of any or some strategies or treatments that can help individuals in situations like that cope and overcome loss of enjoyment for life?
Well, I think number one, it's always good when you have a good support system, a good friend, a good, supporting family. If you're in a relationship with a significant other or spouse, having someone who can understand your situation, be supportive. You're not in your best place at that time, and so your emotions can be all over the place. And so having a good support system that you can talk to and help you through that. The other thing is looking at your life and figuring out a few things of what you can do. You may have loved to have played tennis all the time, but you may find some less active hobbies or things that bring enjoyment that you can do. And so you have to be able to look at that. And that's certainly very helpful. I myself, I'm a Christian, and I have my faith, in which I rely on, something that's beyond me. And so certainly a faith that can give you the encouragement, certainly people and books that raise levels of encouragement, affirmations that keep your mind from going into a place of dark thinking and thoughts. I find that can be very helpful.
And maybe a prayer, journaling,
Yes,
meditation.
all that. And of course, getting where it's needed, the proper treatment, the medical treatment, certainly, and good medical treatment, but where there may be a need for a therapist or things of that nature, I think it's very important. But you have to become aware of it because you can easily sink into it. And of course, all of that depends on this nature and severity of your injuries. Some of these things are very temporary, and then others are permanent nature. And it really has to, at some point, change the way you're thinking.
And you also touched on this quite a bit, but could you specifically say, how does the loss of enjoyment for life impact relationships and social interactions, whether it's with the spouse, significant other, children, grandchildren, neighbors, society overall after a motor vehicle accident or any other major bodily injury?
Well, I've had, as I mentioned, people discuss their issues with their spouse, for example. And a lot of families typically will, in a relationship like that, they have their own specific duties that they carry out, and all of a sudden the other person may be having to carry on those extra duties. So there can be the anxiety with that. The other person can maybe become at some point a little resentful. People who have gone out and done a lot of stuff socially, like dancing and concerts and those type of things, all of a sudden maybe that's taken out of their lives, and they don't know what to do, and so they have to readjust their life. And sometimes one of my favorite songs, especially over the last 5 years for me in my own life with my wife and some of the things that she had gone through, including a car wreck, is song about 38 Special, and this one line says, "Hold on loosely, but don't let go." And for me, it says, you hold on to what you're doing, but life can change, and so you've got to be able to adapt.
That's the word, adapt. Absolutely. Are there any specific populations or age groups that are more susceptible to experiencing a reduced ability to derive pleasure from life? Again, from your own experience, related to motor vehicles or bodily injury.
My first thought is that those who are younger, with less experience of life and seeing their whole life with dreams and hopes and desires before them, if they suffer something that is very traumatic, that changes their ability to do things like they did, a lot of them have a very difficult time. I think the more the older someone is and more emotionally mature, can do a little bit better. I think older people sometimes can handle it a little bit better, because depending on their ages, certainly people that are definitely elderly and with some physical decline, they have begun to accept limitations in life, and they've learned to adjust as they get older. But certainly people in their prime, mentally and physically, that's one of the more difficult times of life to have something that is certainly major trauma.
And based on your lifelong experience in practice in BI, by the way, how long you've been an attorney?
This year, I have been practicing law for 30 years. Had my own practice for 5.
Congratulations.
And, have lived life quite a bit longer than that.
So based on 30 years of experience, are you aware of any research or studies that have been conducted on the psychological impacts of loss of enjoyment in life?
I have not, but I've lived life and been around lots of people and have gone through a lot of various scenarios of life with my own family and friends, and my own personal research to experience it and see it. I don't have the statistics, but I know it's out there, but I don't really need it to see the impact of what it does to folks.
I couldn't agree more. Your life experience and being an attorney and working in this field sometimes speaks better than any statistic.
Yes.
What are some common misconceptions or misunderstandings about loss of enjoyment in life and its psychological effects?
Well, I think one of the things is always a challenge for people in the legal field and their case is that others will, quote, feel your pain the same way you feel it. And sometimes people have a hard time when it comes to expressing their loss and expecting compensation. That can be a little bit more of a challenge because what someone is going through and how it's affected their life, sometimes other people will not necessarily gather that or see it. They may try, but everybody's got their own conceptions of what is trauma and what's difficult in life. And I think that can play into it quite a bit. So sometimes we, as humans, we can overvalue what we see about our life because it doesn't take long to turn around and see someone who has a lot more difficult life going on and yet may have a lot better attitude toward it.
It's very individual experience, I believe.
Very much so.
And also, as a lawyer, you have to be a great psychologist to be able to ask all those questions and for your potential client or actual client to open up.
Yes. Me personally, I try to develop a good relationship with my client because as an individual, I feel like the legal aspects of the case and what I'm supposed to be doing, that's supposed to be a given. But a lot of times, depending on the situation, again, you can't classify personal injury all into one little lump sum of how it affects people. But I think it's important for them to be heard and to have someone that can understand what they go through. I'm also a mediator. Okay. And a lot of times, as I mediate with my own cases, but also I mediate other cases for other attorneys and trying to help them get their cases resolved. As a mediator, I give the person who's injured an opportunity to talk and be able to process some of it. But a lot of times the misconception is that it's going to be clear that others are going to really be able to understand where you are and get it.
How, in your opinion, can individuals and society as a whole be more supportive of those experiencing derived pleasure from life?
That's a big question.
It's pretty broad.
Yeah, it's a broad question, and certainly I think it is one that's well outside, but including the legal profession and people with injuries. If I could come up with one answer would be that to get outside of people need to get outside of themselves more
Mhm.
and look at others and see how others feel and what they're going through. I think it's real easy for all of us at different times of life to be so consumed with our own life and what's going on that we really misconstrue or don't even hear some of the pain and the problems that other people are having. And I think that's a issue for the world.
That's a global
not,
issue.
And I'm not running for Miss USA and I want world peace. But still, it's one of those things that we get consumed with ourselves so much we can't see what's going on with someone else.
And I appreciate you, offering that opinion. That's just beautiful. How the loss of enjoyment of life affect an individual's motivation and drive to pursue their goals, aspirations, dreams?
Well, again, it's one of those that it's what's the severity of it? And if it's more of an aggravation, you can work through it. I've had clients who have a back injury, for example, and they have a limitation, but it gets better over time and they learn to adapt. And for the most part, they're still able to continue on with what they are driving toward and living the life that they want to live. They may have some level that they have to minimize it, but they can do it. Again, as my example of someone who was a quadriplegic or even a paraplegic, that's an extreme on one end, but certainly I've seen it, and it's a huge change. And so they've got to really have an adjustment.
Mhm.
And sometimes they lose hope, and they also have to, at some point in time, they have to really realize that the dreams they had, they're no longer their dreams. They have to reevaluate their life and see where can I go from here to make my life worthy and worthwhile and valuable.
Make some adjustment, change mindset, adapt.
Yes, it is.
Adapt
and a lot of it is about how you think in the process of how you got to grieve but then you got to move forward. I myself, for example, and I don't want to get too personal, but and this is not a personal injury, but it had to do with my wife. And 3 years ago, she had to have a brain surgery. And during that course of time, it was benign cyst, and it was not although they were opening her up and it was a serious surgery, it was all supposed to go well. But one of the things that happened was one of the cysts was wrapped around a blood vessel and it burst, and she ended up with a stroke. And so it was fairly significant and how it changed our lives. But I remember sitting there one day and said, okay, we can grieve this, and we are grieving it. But this is our journey now. And so we have to kind of pick up, dust ourselves off, and walk this journey. We can wallow in it and, have a pity party for a long time, but at some point it's still there and you got to change.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Just to recap, Philip, how can you think of any specific coping mechanisms or strategies that individuals can use to regain a sense of joy and pleasure in life again?
Yes, I think they should always reassess their life. What can I do that's still fun? Is this permanent? If it's not, be patient, work toward the goal to get better. There's a lot of injuries that you have to put the effort of physical therapy and work hard to get back there. Athletes is a perfect example when they're injured on playing sports, and it can be severe injuries, and they have to go through a lot of pain and sacrifice to keep going, but eventually they can get back to where they were and maybe even better. And if you can't do those things, find the other things. Again, I said a support system, which is, your family and friends, what you read, what you think, and then also, for me, it's a level of faith, something beyond yourself.
Mhm. And you mentioned your mediation company. Is that the same name as your law firm, or
Well, I this past year I joined a mediation group called Avery Mediation, and we're very pleased and honored to be a part of that group, and so I feel like 30 years of law experience plus living life gives me an opportunity to try to help get some cases resolved and people resolve their issues. So I'm enjoying that. And but I appreciate the little plug in there for Avery Mediation.
Hey. And if someone is in need for an amazing auto injury attorney as yourself in Buford, Ellijay, Metro Atlanta, or if somebody's looking for your mediation services, how can they locate you, Philip? Do you have a website?
Yes, I have a website, Facebook page, social media. I've got someone who helps handle all that. That's not my field. It's philipmilam.com, and Philip is with one L. And then email address philip@philipmilam.com or info@philipmilam.com. So we're easy to reach, and would love the opportunity to help some people.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, Philip, for being my special guest on the It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast today, and for talking with me about the complexities of loss of enjoyment in life. But before I let you go, I have one last question.
Right.
You ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess.
What has been your favorite job you've held besides being an attorney throughout all of your life? Just think of all your jobs you ever held. Which one was your favorite and why?
Well, now that you bring that up, it's probably when I was younger in college and starting out with some other jobs before I got into law, and that would have been in the construction industry, helping do some side projects. I had a paint and wallpaper. I helped a construction company and building houses, things like that. Because one of my hobbies for things I like to do is landscaping and projects around the house and those kind of things. And so I learned a few skills that are not my normal everyday life, and it's so completely different. I can see some good results. Sometimes not so much. A lot of times it's spent a lot of time just going back and forth to Home Depot to get a new tool or something I didn't realize, but I enjoy that. And it's more on the creative side for me.
Lisa has been truly blessed.
Well, thank you. I'm blessed as well.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Laura.
That was Attorney Philip Milam with Milam Law Firm, LLC. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all again for watching and listening to our story about the complexities of loss of enjoyment of life today. For more tips and tricks on legal funding and personal injury related topics, follow me, like, and subscribe at More Injury Funding. And it's time for More Injury Funding podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and other podcast platforms worldwide. Also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Google Business Profile, and my website at moreinjuryfunding.com. I can't wait to see you and hear you, all my dear listeners and viewers, again soon. Until then, be well. Thank you.
Very good. You're all over.